Good morning. It is time for the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com. And now your host, Mike Hewitt. Good morning, Mike.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning. And in the studio with me is Ludwig von Wiedendorsky and Pax. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good morning.
No, I'm glad you didn't do the routine like you did here a while back. That was so silly. Hello. Anyhow, beyond that, listen, one of the things I really wanted to, I've got a couple things on the list today, but probably what I really want to focus on, at least until we get to the ENIGMA report, is I want to talk a little bit about the angst that's in the nation right now, because I think that there is a fairly significant measure of angst. Normally in years gone by, I've been involved as a volunteer for a long time politically. Normally I see the angst that I'm seeing now within like the political envelope, the folks that are involved in it directly. But I see it a lot more, and it's manifesting itself in a lot of different ways. Following the Iowa caucus on Monday, I mean, that part right now is old news. But what's not old news is why we're seeing a fellow like Trump out in front, why we're seeing Cruz out in front, why Dr. Carson is doing so well. With absolutely no political background whatsoever. We can sit and identify that Trump, whether he wants to be an outsider or not, whether he's viewed that way or not, he's had a long, long history in the political environment. Cruz at 40-some years old, relative to his age, has been involved for a very long time. He's sitting senator, so we can't say he's not part of the, but Dr. Carson's not, although he's been a contributor and a volunteer in his life. So you have to say, pause for a minute, let's get beyond the characters on the stage, if you will, and say, why is it that the American electorate, because we're really the folks that are in control. And I get some pushback a lot of time. No, it's big money, it's this, it's that. Well, yeah, it is all of that, but inevitably, when you're standing in the booth, it isn't big money anymore. It's you and the ballot sheet. And so you can pretend that big money stole the election. I know a lot of people disagree with me on this. I get it. But in the end, it's the electorate standing alone in the booth saying, who do I want? Well, Mike, they were manipulated. No, they got a brain. They did. They made a decision. They watched all of this. Trump is for universal health care. I'm not taking a position of for or against him right now, nor am I commenting on universal health care. But irony being what it is, most of the folks that are supporting him are not in favor of universal health care. So, and the reason I bring that up is some folks are having to swallow deep and willfully accept things that they wouldn't normally accept because of some overriding things that they're measuring in their mind, whether it's conscious or not, they're measuring as more important than the normal arguments. Eminent domain. This guy is absolutely in favor of eminent domain. He says it's wonderful. Again, I'm not taking a position on him. We're going to do the same with Cruz and the doctor, by the way. Okay, these are outside people. They've got views that are not necessarily in keeping with traditional republicanism. And I say that not Republican Party folks, small r Republican form of government. A lot of these views are contrary to that, at least in my view. So I stood back from the Iowa caucus. I watched it till the end, well, almost the end. I gave up before I found out whether they flipped the coins all the way through the Democratic side. And by the way, that's part of the story this morning, because when I look at that, there's as much angst on the left as there is on the right. This really, the angst in America, it's not partisan. It has a fury to it, and it's where somebody like Bernie can come up with a near tie. Some would say he beat her that close. Is this like the Gore election? Where's the hanging chads at? It was that close. And so I stand back. I say, how does this happen? It's in this part with him, by the way, we've talked a lot about on this show. What's fueling Bernie's fire is me quoting Huffington Post again, 1,140% increase in higher education tuition just since 1980 during the same period of time when wages have only doubled. So we've talked about your debt on the air before. So if you're some young person and you've got a debt that's greater than the average person's mortgage, literally, and you're not even 21 yet, and you got some guy say, hey, I'm going to give it to you for free. That's an easy sell, I'm telling you.
Yeah, well, most of his supporters are from that age group.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And because they're hearing it's free, yet I'm obviously an instructor of those students, they would never, I have a hard time getting to ask the question why anymore, and that when they should be asking us why and how are you going to pay for that?
They should, but when I look at it, in fact, I posted on Facebook the other day, beyond the hype of push and pull between the parties and the candidates, there's a universal, both left and right, anger in flyover country. It is so, I've never seen it before. Now, I've been involved in volunteer politics since 2003 or so. I've always been a follower of what's going on and a political junkie, if you will. I've never seen it this high, ever. Ever. Both sides. Wound up by what I believe is a systemic lack of leadership. Frankly, both in the capital, in both capitals, both here in the state capital, and I believe this is true in most states, but especially in those few states that have a full-time legislature. I think that's part and parcel of it. In fact, I was having a conversation with a federal legislator a while back, and he was trying to understand what the angst was. I said, I remember the folks that were running for office in 2010 coming to Tea Party meetings and throwing out the red meat. And then when they got to Lansing or when they got to D.C., it was like, poof, they went through this metamorphosis, and you're going, wait a minute. So what I was saying to the fella is, listen, when you throw out the red meat at election time, don't be surprised if you're surrounded by lions, because those lions like the red meat. Yeah. And we're going to hold you to it. Where is the red meat? The old commercial, where's the beef? Yeah. Where's the beef? And it just... They get into the caucuses and they sit them down and they say, "Hey, you don't understand. We're going to teach you stuff that they don't know, and you're gonna go through this metamorphosis. You're going to be so much smarter in just a few minutes." The American people in flyover country, and there's a difference. I keep saying that term, flyover country. There's a difference in the angst between the folks that are out on the left coast and the lost coast. There's a big difference. But listen, it's no different than what our founding fathers talked about when they said at some point, when we get as high as population as Europe, we'll be as corrupt as Europe. And that's not to say that the left coast and the lost coast are corrupt. But I am telling you that they need, when you got 100 million people living on a postage-sized piece of property, they need a lot different rules than we do sitting here in West Michigan. Yeah. It's just that simple. So they view, by the way, they have a vantage point that allows them to believe that everyone is either an illiterate hick or they're dealing with the same drama that they're dealing with on that postage stamp size of property. You pause and say, no. If you guys want to do that to yourself, this goes back to states' rights, by the way. It goes back to what federalism means, what small r Republican form of government means. If the folks in New York City or New York in the state in general, or Connecticut, California, etc., if they want to regulate themselves so they look like France, God bless them. But the great experiment called America would allow for competition between the states, so you could vote with your feet. You'd say, come on, Pax, wife, kids, let's go, we're going. And that's changed a lot with a powerful central government, and it's part of where the angst comes from. But there's I've got my notes here: wallet, fear, border. I don't remember where the word fear came, but fear has a big to do in this particular election. It goes to the border. It goes to the sense that our government is not capable of defending us, and while they're openly, clearly unable to defend us. And there's no question about that. While they're inviting other folks in that we perceive as a risk, they've demonstrated that they're not able to defend us. During that same period of time, they're saying, by the way, we need you to disarm.
Yeah.
Not so much.
Well, I grew up, and when I grew up, I thought the point of the federal government was essentially to protect the borders, and that was really their maximum power. Really, beyond that was back to states.
Interstate commerce in the defense of the Union of States.
Yeah.
That's where we're at. But I don't know that the average person right now is filled with angst over that. They may be filled with angst over the fact that they have fear, that they're trying to be disarmed. Some of them, by the way, that's probably a slice of the problem. If you look at the Bernie side, like we talked about, with outrageous, I mean, crazy priced education. And when you boil down the curriculum, 25% of it goes to what you're trying to get to, and you're still walking away with $100,000 in debt to get a degree that people say, nice degree. You want to make 30 or 35,000? You go, what? Wait, what? Stop. That's insane. Some of these things have left the tracks, and frankly, they're the things that we've hired our legislators to handle for us. So when we look at what domestically, what has government had the most impact on? Education and health care, and to your point, whether we feel secure or not.
And what have all decreased in the last 50 years?
Nothing. Everything that they've touched has went through the roof.
Not money, quality.
Well, it's funny, we can flip that around too, because the actual money has become far less. President Obama says we don't have any inflation. Well, that's not just wrong, it's a bold-faced lie. We have outrageous inflation.
Yeah.
And folks know that. When they go get a loaf of bread and compare it to a loaf of bread 5 or 6, 7 years ago, there's no question. When you print money and you put more money into the system, the money that you're putting, it's a form, by the way, of unrepresented tax, because the value didn't disappear, it was glommed. That's what folks are not necessarily, but they know something's wrong. They know something's wrong. That's why they're digging in and saying, we want to get somebody like Trump. We don't even agree with what he says necessarily, but we know that man gets things done.
I think that's really the angst is, in your household, if you disagree with your wife or your husband, you have to work it out. Otherwise, the household falls apart in divorce and all that. So we know how to work things out. And we're watching the government, excuse me, for the last 20 years not get anything accomplished, especially since 2008, that helps increase our livelihoods, our retirement, our kids' futures. I think that's where my angst comes from. I'm watching things fall apart because it's either Republican all the way or Democrat all the way.
I got to tell you, though, I'm older than you, and so I'm a Reaganite. And I remember, I was never a Tip O'Neill fan, by the way. And in fact, we've talked about this on the show. One of the things, two things I'm attached to Tip O'Neill. The first, that he said that all politics is local, I think he was right. It's one of the few things that I think he was right about. But the other thing is that I would applaud him for is that him and Ronald Reagan could go have a cocktail or a dinner together and say, okay, these are the 3 things we're never going to agree on. How do we move government forward?
Yes.
And they move government forward. Okay.
I love it.
That's what they did. Now we've reached a point in time where we say, the media tells us what we're thinking, which is such a such a farce. We're such a divided nation. We really are. The leadership is divided. But listen, even on Facebook, let's use Facebook as a measure for a moment. If you say, I don't like Trump, or I don't like Carson, or whomever it is that you don't like, and you present your top 3 reasons why, or let's take the positive. Forget the other candidates. You say, I like candidate X, and here's my top reasons why, you will be unfriended by people.
Yeah.
And I say, wait a minute. I thought one of the things that made Ronald Reagan exceptional was his ability to communicate and stay involved and advance his ideas in the arena of ideas. And now we're saying, yeah, we like that a lot, but if you're for him, you're not my friend, get out of here. You go, what? But I think that goes to the level of fear that we have in our country, and I really think fear is it. The other thing that it is on my little short list, fear from the borders, fear from what the government is doing to us culturally. And I know whenever I say the word culture, people say, oh my goodness, that's liberal talk. No, it isn't. It's the fabric of what makes America exceptional.
Yeah.
And it's being tampered with, by the way, on purpose. Not by happenstance, but on purpose. And people know that. And that's why when Trump says the things he says, there's a lot of folks that applaud him. Yes, build a wall. Stop that nonsense. We can't control it. So the only way, if we can't control it, is to stop it. So when he stands up there and very defiantly says, I'm going to do that, people applaud. because that's what they want done, because that's what they know is right. The old definition that says if you don't have borders, you're not a nation. That's one of the first elements of defining a nation is its borders, and are they secure? And if they're not, you're not a sovereign nation. And to our form of government, you're not a sovereign people. I don't know how else we can get it, but the other half of this is the wallet. We can't forget the wallet. The ENIGMA report today, in fact, is going to get into a handful of really lightweight things like corporate tax. Okay? That's what that's going to be about. But the wallet, every time you turn around, it doesn't matter how much you make, there's somebody standing there with, we talk about inflation, but folks, the amount of tax that you're being taxed right now that you don't even know you're paying is outrageous. And the folks that are not actually drilling into it, they're propelling this because they may not know the numbers, but they know something's wrong. There's something wrong. When you take Michigan, you got almost 10 million people, 9.9 last time I saw the number, in a $55 billion budget. Go what? Say those numbers again. You think about that for a minute. $55 billion budget being asked to pay. Sounds nice, by the way. It's being asked to pay for by the 9 point some, but no. How many actual people are employed in the state of Michigan? It's a hair over 4 million people. So now you've got 4 million people trying to pay for almost $55 billion. And you pause, you go, something really is wrong. And people will say, no, Mike, stop that. 38% of that comes from feds. Well, the feds didn't actually, I take that back. Feds did just print the money. The money comes from us, we the people. Okay? And if you're running around priding yourself because Michigan gets more than it gives, are you trying to say we take pride in having the state of Michigan on federal welfare?
Some people do.
Not your neighbor, not your daughter, not somebody. There's no pride in that. There's no success in that. I don't, but we've been turned into something really, really ugly as a state. And people know these things. They feel it. So, folks, we're going to go to a break. And when we come back, we're going to run down a list that may surprise you. We'll be right back.
And now we return to the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com.
Then the question really is, are you feeling safe on a national basis? Do you feel that the borders of the United States, but listen, not the Mexican border, do you feel that the United States of America is safe? Or do you think we're under attack? When you look at national polling, the majority of people from both parties, the majority of people, whether they self-identify as liberal or conservative, are saying that we're at jeopardy, that we are going to have an attack on our domestic soil again. Most of them fear that it will rival 9/11. And you pause and you say, really? Well, we know this. Why are we doing that? And we hear all of the NSA debates, whether they're spying or not spying. And listen, my concern is, yes, I tend to be a little bit of a libertarian on this. Don't listen to me unless you've got a very good reason and the court said so. But beyond that is just you have to pause and do the reality of it. If they're scooping out 1 billion phone calls, how in the heck can they reasonably find the ones that matter? And so I'm hearing in my head people are saying, no, they're using software to seek your words. Well, but listen, half those words are words that they're saying on radio shows like this one across the United States. How do they draw that down? They're taking such a huge scoop of water. Not the Flint topic, although we may touch that today. I don't know how they sit and rationalize that doing so. I mean, we've been waiting for 6 months for Hillary to find the emails, and yet they're scooping. She's a Secretary of State in her time, so
they're right next to Jimmy Hoffa's body.
That's probably what I still think they're behind the toilet in the bathroom in Colorado. These things cause people on both sides of the aisle angst. They do. Yeah. You sit and you read that and you watch it. Even if you're a Democratic, a self-identifying Democrat, and you want to support her, in your heart of hearts you think something's wrong. This isn't right, and it's not just her, by the way. I'm not attacking her right now. Something's wrong with our culture. That the State Department is going to defend her because probably they're defending themselves. There'll never be a charge, and if there is, it'll be automatically swept away. it's political, and you pause and you say, you know what, for just a minute, let's skip the politics on either side of the aisle and do what's right. Because if it were you, you'd already be in jail.
Oh, yeah.
Probably you ought to be, by the way.
Oh, man.
Hey, listen, everybody, no one's going to get... And you say, so people, voters, that's what I want, voters are standing back and say, you know, there's something really dreadful. Something stinks with our government. It ain't right. Michigan, and I don't want to get real deep into this, but 81% of the voters in a Republican, small r, a Republican form of government, 81% of the voters said, don't do that. What'd they do? They did it. They did it because it was good government policy. No, good government policy is to follow the directive of the voters. And listen, if you're a wise guy and you're sitting on top of the pile somewhere near the top, and you say, I know better. Here's how the Republican form of government is supposed to work. It works the same way it does in real life. I say that don't steal a person's mother of necessity. And I believe that, by the way, and how I'm equating it to the gas tax and the endless numbers of other taxes is when the people say, no, don't do that, if the folks that were proponents of it are right, they should have, in my view, stepped back and say, okay, deal with your bumpy roads, and you'll lose your economy because businesses won't come, and you're going to lose your car in a pothole, and all of the rest of the things that they said. And then you know what? Then if they were really right, the people would have said, let's spend even more. Mm-hmm. Okay, but what do they call Missouri? The show me state. The state of Michigan, in my view, the government are elected officials, so they say, okay, doesn't matter whether we're right or not. That's what the people want. When you start talking about 81%, you're talking about a polarity of both political parties, the electorate in total. I use that as an example because many of those folks that voted for that in Lansing were running for office in 2010. They stood in front of the Tea Party that I was part of and said the opposite of the things that they would do. And listen, that's happening all across America, so I'm not trying to get into the road tax. It is those type of actions that thwart the direction of a sovereign people that cause the people to look at candidates like Bernie, and Trump, and Cruz, and Dr. Carson. They're saying, we're sick of you liars, all of you. We're going to bring in some real people that have not been poisoned yet by the system. That's what's propelling this. What say you? Am I off in the ditch here?
No, I think you're right. I mean, I remember Christie in the last debate talking about how he needed to get a dictionary on Washington speak because they just went through the whole amnesty thing with Rubio and Cruz, and they showed like 4 videos of Rubio going, no amnesty, no amnesty. Okay, I vote for amnesty. No, I'm not on amnesty. People are just tired of that. They want to know exactly what you think and how you think. And on top of that, I just talked about this in my class yesterday. If you try to put the entire American public in a room to get something solved, there's 360 million people in the country. It would never get done. So we went and we condensed it down to this form of U.S. state representative, or U.S. House representatives of 435 people to represent 360 million, right?
Somewhere in there. So
those 435 are supposed to be our voice collectively, and they don't feel that voice is being heard in the way they want. Like you said, 81%. But then you go back to the other part of, I don't know if it was Jefferson or somebody, I believe it was Jefferson, said, sometimes I'm smarter than the people, and I got to protect them from themselves and vote the way that we should vote and not the way they want to be voted for.
When here a couple of years ago, when we went through a series of primary candidates, interviewing them on the show, one of the things that I wrestled with at the time, and still do to a degree, is do you vote the conscience of the constituency that elected you, or do you vote your conscience? Mm-hmm. And I mean that's a sincere question, by the way. It's not me being flippant. That would be a tough one for a state representative to do, or for a state senator, or for a president.
Oh, yeah.
And part of the difference is leadership. There were times when Ronald Reagan did things that most of the public are going, what? What are you thinking? On the other hand, the difference here is communication. Mm-hmm. So you have the bully pulpit, and you can do that as a state representative or a congressman, etc. You go back and say, listen, it goes. Remember the other when we did the show and I asked you about the Titanic?
Yeah.
I got to touch on that today because for just about, I don't know if any of you folks were listening then, but for just about a 60-second period, we had a failure to communicate.
Yeah, just a little bit.
But it was hilarious because it went right to the point that I was trying to make, is that folks in general hear what they want to hear. They hear what they believe they're going, what they wanted to hear. They don't hear any of the other peripherals. My sister and I, we're as close as peanut butter and jelly. She's a big Trump supporter, and I put stuff on her page all the time that shows her things. She refuses to view them. I thought, how can you refuse to know more? I mean, you may not change your view, that's okay, but how do you refuse to want to know more? I don't get that. But the point of bringing the Titanic back up again is that I think it's still applicable in this episode, because if I were your representative, if I were the state senator, if I were the president, and you elected me for X purpose, and then I got there and the reality of the circumstance said that it can only be part of X purpose or some of it or none of it, I think that a lot of the angst wouldn't be so high if that representative would come back to the people and say, listen, I have to look you in the eyeball now and say, what we thought was this, and it turns out it's that, but I owe you an explanation.
Yeah.
State representative, in fact, I'll say her name, Amanda Price. One of the things I really, really compliment her on, we don't agree on some politics, by the way, one of the things I really, really respect her for is that when I ask her why was this or why was that, I don't get the finger pointing in every single direction. She looks me right in the eyeball, and I did that because of X, Y, and Z, and this is what I believe. I respect that. I may not walk away so I agree with her now, but I walk away really, genuinely respecting her.
Yeah.
We have a different ideology, but that's what America's for. That's what makes America exceptional, is that we're not in lockstep. Yeah. I hear that, I see that on Facebook all the time. I like that person except for this one reason. So I can't vote for him, I can't vote for her. So there are 143,000 reasons, but you're not in lockstep on that one, or that one makes you not in lockstep. Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan would have never been able to do anything if they put their blinders on so tight that they couldn't see in front of them.
That's what you have today.
It's the Titanic story.
Yeah.
What sank the Titanic? The Flint City municipal government sank the Titanic. I went, what did he say? And that was a funny moment. So
well, two things on that. Like, one, when I remember when I was growing up and helping run the business, I made a decision. My mom was out of town. I had to set up a party for after hours and everything. Gave him a price. I couldn't get a hold of her, so I did all this on my own. And when I finally got a hold of her, she said, why? Why did you do what you did?
Right.
And I told her, and she goes, all right, good. She goes, all I want to know is that you understand why you did what you did.
Usually it's fear that causes a representative to not articulate what took place and why, because they fear they're going to be rejected. But it's that lack of communication, in my view, that causes the angst. Yep. You know, we talk often about the 20. It's over $20 trillion debt now. I'm sorry, it's over a $19 trillion debt, heading towards 20.
Yeah.
When the Tea Party started, I think it was 14, and you think somebody owes us an explanation.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And so everyone listens. So we don't like anything that Trump's doing except for this. Clearly, the boy knows how to run a business. Obviously, he owns a calculator, and he uses it. So when stuff doesn't add up, he goes, oh, wait, this doesn't add up. So we may disagree on all the social issues, but if the boy's got a calculator and he uses it, he's ahead of the curve in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
I don't understand truly. I genuinely don't get. Now, maybe this is a reasonable thing. Maybe that they just came out on the edge of the balcony with their old military sash on and looked down on the unwashed masses and articulated why $19 trillion is not a problem. Maybe we go, oh, jeepers, I didn't even think of that. But I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. No. I think $19 trillion, which would go to Saturn, end to end, would go to Saturn, around Saturn, back to Earth, and halfway back.
Jeez.
It's insane. It's insane. And they can't, well, make the 1% pay. The 1% don't have enough. Make the top 10%. Top 10% does. Make the top 20. Top 20 doesn't have it. But you know what? The reason we're looking at these outside candidates is that most people, they know that.
Yeah,
they do know that. Now, the Bernie supporters may not know that, and that's not attacking him or them, by the way. Most of them are very young, so they're 18, 19, 20, and they're panicking about $100,000 education debt, and I don't blame them. I get to make $35,000 after I owe $100,000. Good math. Wow.
Oh, don't worry. The repayment system goes based on your income, so you don't actually have to pay it all back.
Most folks, listen, and on that point, by the way, most folks that are signing up, it's like saying, yes, I want to be a kamikaze pilot. But most folks don't think they're actually going to have to pay it.
No.
Forget Bernie for a minute. This is outside the Bernie envelope. Most folks think this is going to go away. And you know what? Here's something magical for you to comprehend. It ain't going away. Just so you know that. It ain't going to go away.
Do you know that it's one of the few things, taxes and student loans, you can't file bankruptcy on, too?
No. It's this government do-re-mi. The Obama took it over.
Yep.
And that's why it works as well as our healthcare system does.
Yeah.
Think about that for a minute.
And not only do they take it over, they raise the interest rates. It used to be less than 4%. Now the government has them. They're like at 6.5%, 7%.
How's family doing in America?
Family?
Family. In the last 7 years, when I've been saying this on the air a lot, and it's on my list today. I want to make sure before Brian starts waving like a windmill about time that I touch on family. Family's in free fall.
Oh yeah.
And listen, forget my opinion. Forget what the candidates are saying. It's part and parcel of what the angst of what America and the voters. It's part of, people know there's something wrong. They know it, and it goes into the fear factor that people are wrestling with. When you look and say 48% of the babies last year were born to unwed mothers, and then you go to Jackson Prison and you take a survey, how many of you came from single parent? And 85%, 90% raise their hand. Brace for impact. If you think culture in America right now has got some challenges, give her about 15 years. Oh my goodness, we got an out of just the train coming towards us is monstrous. And you've heard me say it a dozen times, I'm not attacking single-parent families. I was a single-parent family member. But the stats say overwhelmingly, hugely, gigantically, fearsomely that we got a train coming.
Yeah.
And it's got no tracks. It's all over the road. We got troubles coming. If you look at Detroit, South Chicago, Watts, L.A., where you've got single-parent families up in the 80% range, okay? And you look at what's happening like we talked about before, with education in Detroit, on par with Haiti. But it costs more than the rest of the state's education combined. How can it be on par with Haiti? How they got rats in the hallway, and yet their educational structure costs more than the rest of the state. Something is wrong. And most folks may not spend the time that we do because we're political monkeys and we're doing show prep or we're doing the things that we do, but they know something's wrong. Dr. Carson, the guy comes across as a very calm, people need a calming figure right now. I think that's part of his success. They're a little bit afraid of his lack of foreign policy. It's why he sagged in the polling a little bit. But they liked the idea that they could have a calming voice. Somebody that's obviously very, very intelligent, someone that's reasoned and calm, a steady hand. Mm-hmm. I think that's part and parcel of what draws folks to him. If he had foreign policy down, I think he'd be doing very, very well right now, because the idea of having that steady hand in the foreign policy arena would make a lot of folks feel good.
Well, isn't that where he started dropping off?
Yeah, because he made some faux pas.
Yeah, in one of the debates.
And they're out on the trail. Mm-hmm. I think he's brilliant.
Oh yeah.
But there's and by the way, I don't know that I'd want to give up and give a lecture on foreign policy right now. But I am smart enough to know that if you go against all of our allies and embrace all of our enemies while you're disarming us, that we'll have some problems. Mm-hmm. That doesn't take a genius. And it goes into what we're talking about on our list today, that there's a lot of folks that feel angst. And that's why they're looking to these outside candidates.
Well, I always thought that one of the main reasons this country was never attacked, besides obviously the big oceans, but North Korea, Russia, nobody ever came, because they knew that the American public had more weaponry than the actual military, in terms of self-defense weapons, and they couldn't overtake us because we have more ammo and weapons to defend ourselves if we had to.
There's almost 200,000. This is from Michigan.gov. There are almost 200,000 concealed pistol license holders in the state of Michigan right now.
Just in Michigan.
Just in Michigan.
200,000.
Yep.
Wow.
And in fact, before I run out of this segment, I wanted to just take a break for a moment from this topic to talk about current legislation is being bounced around on the radio. You're going to hear it today. And given that this show is sponsored by Renegade River, how could I not mention it myself? That Representatives Tom Barrett, Lee Chatfield, Tristan Cole, and Jim Runstead have introduced a bill that would make it so that folks that were law-abiding citizens could just concealed carry, skip all of the rest of the permits and the applications. And I don't know these folks very well. I know them a little bit, but not real well. I don't know that this bill will go anywhere because of fear, but I will tell you that there are a lot of folks like me that resent the heck out of asking the government, can I please have access to my Second Amendment?
Yeah.
There's a lot of, and by the way, these guys make reference to the Second Amendment in their description and in the quotes that they offer in the media, but Michigan's constitutional acknowledgement of a right to keep and bear arms is far more aggressive than what there's no, you shall have, I mean, there's no question what the, and people, well, that was written in the no, it wasn't. It was written in 1964. So it wasn't, I mean, it was during my lifetime, and it was a matter of fact that, so the idea for a lot of us that we've got to go in there and sit with our little hands clasped and say, can we have our Second Amendment, please, just for a little while? Can we? I'll give you $100.
I just asked you that the other day.
What?
About my CPL. When's it got to be renewed? And you're like, oh, 5 years. I said,
Yeah.
oh, was it like $20 to renew it? And you're like, no, 110. I'm like, well, I just paid that to get it.
Well, just as 5 years. The idea that all of these licenses and fees, I shouldn't say all, most of them to me are go to a central government authority that really overpraises itself. It just does. Like the one here a few years ago where the idea was whether a nurse should be able to give a shot.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, under doctor supervision, and she can for a $75 fee. And I said, well, if she's under doctor supervision, what the heck does the state of Michigan have to do with why is she making an application, and why are they collecting a fee for what should be bona fide, obvious, clear as a bell common sense? There's where we derailed, is when I use that term, common sense. Listen,
$55 billion, Mike.
$55 billion for a state that has 9.9 million people.
That's why they need $75.
And only 4.2 million work.
Yeah.
That's not to say that the rest of them are not contributing in some fashion or another, but a lot of them are babies, and a lot of them they're just, go stop it. Where's this dough going?
Yeah.
And so, all these great minds, they look at the budget. Yeah, we've really slimmed that one down. Nuh-uh. Because you ask yourself, folks, you got to ask yourself, the big question is, are you getting that kind of money? Are you being rewarded in some kind of benefit? That kind of money is worth $6,000 per person, $6,000 in value for every man, woman, and child in the state of Michigan. Are we receiving that in benefit from our state government? But that's another topic. Listen, we're going to go to a break, and when we come back, it'll be the Enigma Report.
And now we return to the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com. And it seems to like this kind of weather. You can't see it coming until it's on top of you. The fog, it lurks back there. It's like camouflage for the Enigma Report.
You've been doing straight lace for the last 2 or 3 episodes,
Yeah.
So very, very thanks for that wonderful introduction, Mr.
He was into
Thomas.
that one.
Yeah,
Jim Riley's sitting on a mountain somewhere just like, yeah, go, Brian, go.
And Jim Riley is probably sliding down on his head right now.
Honey Bunches.
Yeah, Honey Bunches, save me. Folks, what I want to talk about for the last little bit of the show is corporate tax. And people are going, oh, that's exciting. Corporate tax. Yowzers, that's really exciting. That's just loser. I just got to ask you the obvious question. First off, the United States of America has the highest These are things to be proud of, by the way.
Got to be number one somewhere.
You got to be number something. Yeah, you got it. It's not education. That ain't happening. No. Listen, the United States has the highest corporate tax in the free world. And some folks applaud that, and that's okay. But what I want to ask is, are you folks paying attention enough to take note of who pays corporate tax? How about you? You're an instructor at a university. Who pays corporate tax?
The consumer.
Yeah, I hate that part.
It's not the business. I tell them, I pick up a piece of paper and I go, what do you think a business is? And they'll tell me all this thing. I go, no, it's this. And I wave a piece of paper in there and they're like, huh? I said, that's all this is a business right here. I can write out here, I own such and such, sign it. I have a business. You think this paper is filing a tax return? Nope. You're paying it. And they finally get it. But
I don't know that they do, because then they'll run right out and vote for folks that say, we need to pay those evil rich people back. Wait a minute. Stop for a minute. Let's think about this. You get a corporate tax. I don't care what it's fees, fines, corporate tax. I don't care. Property, and we've talked about this before. The property tax for the average business, retail business, car dealership, movie theater, I don't care what it is frickin' outrageous. It's gigantic. And then there's a lot of people say, good, those rich people should take part in our society. Stop for a minute. Let's do the math. Get a piece of paper, write this down. Let's say my business did $100,000 in property tax this year. That's my property tax. But I didn't lose any money in my business. This is an important ingredient. If my business didn't lose any money because the money it generated paid all of its bills, including tax, that means those folks that were representative in the gross revenue, sales of tickets, sales of cars, sales of whatever we're selling. Wholesale, by the way, it's the same thing. Let's say I'm the Acme Box Company, okay, and I make boxes for a living. I sell boxes to the local retail store that uses the boxes, and I pay big, gigantic corporate fees and fines and licenses and all kinds of all the government coming everywhere. By the way, in my business, if I add up the stacks of piles, and I say, okay, here's my rent, here's my utilities, here's my government, the various levels of government is the biggest stack. And when I don't lose money, thank you, it's because you paid it. It's in there, just like ragu, to use an old term. It's in there. And I don't get why people clap like penguins at the notion of business tax. What brought this up and why I wanted to do this in the Enigma today is I was listening to one of the Bernie supporters talk about corporate tax. I said, that moron is excited about paying more tax. And we just talked about it at the end of the last segment. If you dial down, I think it came up to the working people in Michigan were paying $12,674. That's not entirely true, because some of that comes from the Fed. Remember the states on welfare? And when you pause, you go, folks, please go to Walmart. I know we don't like Walmart. I get it. Even though they employ a boatload of people, we'll go to Myers. We'll go to, I don't care. We'll go to the dollar store. Buy a calculator. This is just math. Okay, so when you're clapping like penguins with excitement because you get to punish some evil corporation, remember who you're punishing. And by the way, skip all of the punishment, Doc. Skip the tax, skip the 1% argument, skip all of that. Ask yourself if, as a society, we're actually getting anything out of what we're doing. The answer is yeah. So where did the money go? I don't know about you, but I am one of the workers in Michigan, and I'm sure as a heck not getting my $12,674 in state benefit. This is insane, folks. It's insane, in my view, and it is an enigma to me. That's why it's here right now. It is genuinely, truly, absolutely, without exception, an absolute enigma that as a population, we don't say, stop this train. I don't think folks realize, I got a budget in front of me. And we've talked about this before. If you have a husband and a wife, first off, how unusual that would be. If there's a husband and a wife and they both are employed, getting more unusual.
Yeah.
Okay. Take the lesser of the two incomes, assuming they're both full-person incomes. Okay. And add up all of the taxes you pay for a family. And I'm looking at a pie chart from the Huffington Post. It says taxes 7%.
You gotta think with the Huffington Post lately.
You know
Are
why?
they changing?
Do you know why I use them? because no matter what numbers I say, people scream and hop it up and down. That radical right-wing nut, listen, it's Huffington Post math. I don't agree with it because I think it's really, really watered down. They have health care at 27%. When you drive into the numbers, it's because they don't count if your health care is covered by the government or your employer. Let's pause about it for a minute. Employer-paid health care, as rare as that's becoming, is part of your wages. This is not something that's really tricky. Yeah. It's your money. If they didn't pay for they're identifying the job that you do, and they're saying that job performance, that position is worth X, and we'll pay it in the following fashion. We'll give you X dollars per hour or per week or however they're paying it, and it comes with a benefit, and it comes with whatever else it comes with. It's your benefit. It's for your work. It ain't free. So when Huffington doesn't include this, it's a little bit insulting. Having said that, let's pause for a minute and stay on deal. Taxes is what we're talking about, and those taxes, the health care, is chock full of all kind of fees and tax and all the businesses that are involved in getting that product to your wallet, the little plastic card you get to carry. Every step of the way has got a big pile of corporate tax. Remember how much you love that? So when you're wondering why your premium is sky high, it's because the government spends money like they're all hooked on crack. It does. It's insane. It's in there just like ragu. Housing. No, you don't have no taxes attached to your housing. Not just, people say, Mike, it's just property tax. It's only whatever it is, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a year. No, it isn't. Everything that you buy for that house, every single item that you buy is loaded with sales tax and corporate tax and transportation tax, and it goes on and on and on. It was like the toaster thing I told you about here several shows ago. $19 toaster. I did my best, this was several years ago, to extract all of the various taxes out. And that included the wonderful taxes like the telegraph tax that's still in there. Telegraph tax, what's that doing in there? And you add all of these things up, and that $19 toaster was a $3 toaster. We're paying an incredible amount of tax. I mean, gigantic.
Yeah.
And we're not getting anything for it. You don't feel secure. Your borders aren't secure. Your health care sucks. It's worse now than it's ever been in the United States of America during modern times. There are less people now with affordable coverage than there were in 1964 by percentage, literally. I look at child care. When I was a child, my mother used to drop me down off at the nice, sweet lady up the street. Now you got to get a license, you got to pay tax, you got to have a fine, you got to have a fee, you got to do this as you coordinate. It sounds like the Soviet Union, folks, and it's filled with tax. How wonderful. That's what I'm telling you. Every chunk on here that the Huffington Post identifies, and transportation's a big chunk, by the way. In fact, it's got to be close to, exceeds food, exceeds, and it's filled with tax and fees. And you stop and you say, really? Is this what we've allowed our government to become?
I bet if you look at it, out of your dollar, you probably, after being taxed, get between 40 and maybe 50 cents on the dollar.
Joint household income, you're at 50%. Joint household income, that's where I started this little rant. Mm-hmm. The lesser of the two wages, assuming that he or she is full-time, entirely goes to tax. And then you pause for a minute and say, okay, I talked about culture earlier, and I joked that people's eyes glaze over when I use that word, okay? What's happening to our culture when you work really hard to keep your marriage together, but nobody's there to raise the kids because you guys are busy paying tax? And we go, oh, this is okay. Mike, just calm down. It's okay. It's not okay. Is what I'm telling you. It's not okay. We got every day there's news where there's somebody somewhere doing something insane. Mm-hmm. And that's what causes folks to look at these outside candidates, like we talked about in our driving topic today, to say we need to embrace something new because what's happening ain't working real good. It's not working real good. So people say, well, look at voter turnout. When you go to a district meeting for your local state representative and there's the same 2 or 3 people there, folks, I'm begging you, get involved, pay attention, because this stuff is not going away. I don't care who we elect. it ain't going to go away, and it's going to keep getting worse unless you get involved.
You may not have an interest in it, but it has an interest in you.
Oh boy, they've been saying that since 400 BC. Take an interest, folks. In the meantime, find us at on Twitter at Talk Mike Hewitt, and of course on / The Mike Hewitt Show at Facebook and the MikeHewittShow.com. Speaking of that, we've got to do something different with that website.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
I haven't even thought about it.
I know that. I can tell by looking at it. Very, very dear friend of me was kind of half being polite while making fun of me. Folks, I'll see you next Wednesday. Actually, I'm going to be on Friday morning with Brian in the Morning Show. So I'll see you next week, folks. Have a great week. Thanks for tuning in.